Good evening, YouTube. You guys are now watching another segment of TheCaliEffect. Today we will be doing the Archfiend deck profile. Overall, just a really good deck built around the Archfiend Lord of Horror and the Empress. Overall, that build is something I really wanted to go for because of the consistency. People said that it didn't have consistency, quote unquote, but as you can see in the playlist below, if you want to check that out, 5 great duels of it. It has a lot of consistency there, just a little more room for improvement, but overall, just a great deck. Let's get down to it. First, we're going to be running 3 Archfiend, the Lord of Horror guy, sure. 3,000 beater when you summon through Empress. 1,500 beater when you want to normal summon on himself. You can banish any Archfiend card to destroy something on the field. So that effect is pretty much abused all of the time. Overall, just one of the main components of the deck. Really good card. Next, we're going to be doing 2 Archfiend Empress. Now, the only reason why I don't run 1 is because, first of all, she's an amazing trade-in target. And secondly, if she does ever get hit by that random bottomless, half of your deck just becomes useless. So 2 is pretty useful. Summoning her is pretty easily as well, so I decided to use 2. Overall, just a really good effect. Special summoning any of your level 8 monsters, or level 6 higher fiend monsters from your graveyard if she would be destroyed. And if any of your other monsters would be destroyed, you can destroy something else instead. Just overall that protection that you need. Next, we're going to be running 2 Tragodia. Since this deck generates so much advantage very easily, Tragodia is a perfect card. Not to mention that it's an Empress target. His ability to morph himself into any level that he wants and even take my opponent's monsters is used very easily, and manipulating his level is the key aspect that he brings to this deck. For lower level monsters, we're going to be running 3 Hyris. Now, Hyris is the engine of the deck. This is how we search our cards. This is how we get our cards to our hand. This is how basically we run our engine. Hyris is that important to the deck. It should be ran in no less than 3. If somehow Konami decides YuGiOh should become Magic, you should run 4. And that's how good this card is. Just overall amazing. Next, 1 copy of Armageddon Knight, being able to dump Hyris to the graveyard and any other necessary targets that you need. Overall, just a really good card. 2 Cavalry. When you have your setup on this deck and you keep dumping Hyris, Cavalry is probably the next thing you want to go to because it prevents your opponent from doing just destructive things, because you get to special summon your Archfiend Empress again, and then the loop starts all over, forcing your opponent to waste major resources on this card, the Empress, and then the Lord of Horror. It's overwhelming for the opponent over time. Overall, he's just a 1900 beater, and that forces your opponent to waste resources on him. Just really good. Next, we're going to be running 2 Archfiend General, highly searchable through Hyris, able to get our Pandemonium to the field so we can abuse further plays. 2 Tour Guide from the Underworld, able to special summon Hyris completely for our deck. If we exceed it into Zen Mains or a Fortune Tune, we'll be able to get Hyris' effect. Keep in mind, if you exceed for a Leviair or something, you cannot use the cost effect to give it 500 or whatever and get Hyris' effect, because Hyris' effect cannot be activated for exceed monsters that use under cost. But overall, just a really good card. Next, 1 copy of Dark Arm. This card seems to be more sacky in this deck than anywhere. Being able to manipulate your graveyard to have 3 darks is fairly easy with this deck because you have Horror, you have the Archfiend trap card that I cannot think of. We'll go over it right now, or when we get there, I apologize. 1 copy of Dark Grepher. I actually was running 2 Armageddon Knights until I decided to drop it for Dark Grepher. Dark Grepher really fuels our graveyard and allows us to get what we need to the graveyard as soon as possible. We still get Hyris' effect for pitching with Dark Grepher, so overall, just a really good addition. Next, we're going to be running Trance Archfiend. Trance Archfiend is a really good card. It allows us to ditch that Archfiend monster that we need to the graveyard to our hand. And it has great synergy with Archfiend Lord of Horror, being able to grab any of our banished monsters back to our hand. Also searchable with Hyris, just a really, really good card in this deck. For spells, we're going to be running 2 Pandemonium. Now, we use Pandemonium over the other field card because all of our monsters work on getting destroyed. And over time, this will generate mass advantage for us. Especially even with just summoning Horror and just letting it go in the graveyard, being able to search that Hyris that you need. This ultimately turns our bad hands into amazing hands. And overall, just the best spell card for us, I believe. At least for this build. 2 copies of Trade-In. Trade-In overall is a really good card, especially since your level 8s are extremely searchable through Hyris, and we have so many ways to put Hyris in the graveyard. Really helps us for filling that graveyard with those dark level 8 monsters that we need and sets up for further plays. 2 copies of Mystical Space Typhoon. I hope I shouldn't have to explain this to you. 2 copies of Forbidden Lance. We lose a lot to back row. and we need our monsters on the field sometimes. And Forbidden Lance really helps us getting over those bottomless, getting under those compulses, and just D-prisons and stuff that really doesn't destroy Archfiends. Everything else is fine. Like the Mirror Forces and Torrentials are perfectly fine for us, but it's the things that we can't stand that Lance really gets over with us. Overall, just an amazing card, and if it need to be, you use it to reduce your opponent's monster's attack so you can finally get over it. One copy of Reinforcements of the Army. I know this card seems a little situational because we only run 2 warrior monsters, but it works fairly well getting that Armageddon Knight to our hand, then being able to ditch the Hyris to our graveyard, or even getting Gruffer to our hand and ditch the necessary parts to our graveyard so we can start getting combos off. One Foolish Burial. Sending Hyris to graveyard is amazing. That's really what this card is used for, and sending the other necessary components as Empress or Horror if you really need to. One copy of Allure of Darkness. I shouldn't have to explain this card either. Dark Hole. I hope I don't have to. Solemn Warning. Bottomless Trap Hole. Torrential Tribute. 2 Dimensional Prison. And then the last card for main deck will be Triple Archfiend's Roar. Now, we want this card as fast as possible. It's extremely searchable through Hyris. It's banishable through Horror. And it really sets up our plays. The ideal thing is to summon Empress through Archfiend's Roar. Archfiend's Roar is going to destroy Empress at the end phase. If you have Pandemonium, go ahead and search your Archfiend monster and bring out Horror. Now, Horror becomes a 3,000 beater, able to banish any of your Archfiend cards in hand or graveyard to destroy stuff. Puts a lot of pressure on your opponent, and it all starts with this Archfiend's Roar, which is extremely searchable and extremely versatile. Now for side deck. I did a lot of thought on side deck, mainly because this deck doesn't really have a lot of weaknesses. It's just being pushed over by your opponent. So for Prophecies, I really wanted to put in that Eradicator Epidemic Virus. We have so many targets for this card. I do run Crazy Box and Extra Deck for skill drain. Just overall an amazing card. Hitting all those spells or traps, that problematic thing for the opponent, is deadly. Next, we're going to be running 2 Deck Devastation Virus. Overall, just a really good card, hitting those low-level monsters. We still run just as many targets, if not more targets, with Deck Devastation Virus and Archfiend, so we're going to go ahead and hit that. Triple Gozen Match. Now, this is specifically for Dragon Rollers. I didn't really want to take out the aspect and put in the aspect of banishing or Horror and putting an Imperial Iron Wall, but Gozen Match does the exact same job and is able to allow us to banish stuff to do our plays. Overall, just a really good card for stopping the opponent with multiple attributes. Next, 3 copies of Skill Drain. For the decks that really want to go there, this deck is almost completely unaffected by Skill Drain, especially if you play it right. Siding in Skill Drain would utterly hurt the opponent, while us, it really doesn't hurt as bad. Triple Maxi. For the decks that love to special summon, I have Maxi. 1 copy of Mystical Space Typhoon. And that F Ophion right here, the XYZ Encore, being able to stop any of your opponent's Big X Siege. Use this card when needed. Overall, just a really good card. Now for Extra Deck, you really don't go into it much, but when you do, you generally do need it. We have 1 Heretic Sun, Dragon of the Overlord. Overall, just a really good level 8 monster. Extremely clutch, being able to get into our plays. We normally don't summon it, like I said, but when we do, we need it. Just a really good card. Next, we're going to be running 1 Evil Swarm Ouroboros. Like I said, there isn't much that we need in this deck, but when we do go for it in the Extra Deck, it is needed. Overall, just a really good card, being able to banish stuff, get rid of your opponent, outlets and resources. Just a really good card overall. Next, we're going to be doing Vylon de Sigma. Like I said, this Extra Deck is really to what you want it to be. And Vylon de Sigma actually is a really good card. A Snatch Steal monster type ability, being able to take your opponent's monster, and if it battles the monster of the same attribute, it's destroyed. Next, we're going to be running 1 Diamond Direwolf. Just a really good card. Standard rank 4. Key Beetle. All our monsters are dark. We can hit into it. Just a really good card for protecting your Pandemonium or whatever you need protected. 1 Black Ship of Corn. Standard rank 4. Crazy Box. Now, Crazy Box is amazing under Skill Drain. It helps you with those Erad targets, and people don't see it coming. Mainly because Crazy Box is a Dark Fiend. It really shines into this deck, being able to be hit by Skill Drain and still be a 3,000 beater, fit for Deck Debbie and Erad, still fit the type of Fiends. It's just a really good card. Next, 1 Daigusto Emerald. We have the room, why not? 1 Gagaga Cowboy. 1 Maestro. 1 Abyss Dweller, 1 Acid Golem, 1 Lavo Chain. Actually, probably the biggest rank 4 I would go into. Just being able to send that Hyris to the graveyard, or the necessary components, is crucial. 1 Zinmains, 1 Levier, and 1 Fortune Zoom. Now, the biggest thing I wanted to talk about, because I'm pretty sure you guys haven't really noticed it because the deck is so well constructed, is that I don't use Falling Down. I know. Interesting. Don't get me wrong, I like this card. I really, really do like this card. It's an amazing card. But every time I had it, it was like you needed the Archfiend. It didn't really feel consistent. It was a dead draw. It was a horrible top deck, all this, all that. Don't get me wrong, if you guys can find a way to at least put it in sideboard, I'd probably take it out for at least sideboard for your opponent's problematic cards. Just being able to steal them and go for a game is pretty good. I'm not the OTK type of player. This card doesn't really fit my play style. If I'm taking my opponent's monster, I want to do something with it so I don't have to pay and don't give it back. But overall, it's just player's preference. I strongly feel that this card is one of those player preference cards. And I'm not going to knock it because it is an amazing card that can hit per game and can put a lot of pressure on your opponent. But thank you guys for watching another segment of The Cali Effect. Please like, comment, subscribe. Most of all, enjoy.